All right. Let me start over again. Our Sunday school lesson picks up a preview to this. Children of Israel come out of Egypt, 10 plagues. The Red Sea was opened up, and God let the people of Israel, about 1 million people, a couple million people, through the Red Sea. And the Egyptian army says, well, we could do the same thing. We'll follow them. And the Egyptian army got in there, and then God closed up the sea and drowned them all. Whether you believe that this was a 6 inches of water or however, God destroyed the Egyptian army in that Red Sea, and they were saved. The horse and rider and then they wrote a song about the horse and rider by Moses' sister. Wrote the song, if I'm not mistaken, and they had a song about their deliverance from the Egyptian army. So now they are a free nation. They were all slaves, and they just left there. So now they're in the wilderness, and they're on their own. No one's chasing them now because they were all destroyed. And so this is the birth of the nation here. 1 million strong, and they're following a cloud and a pillar of fire by night. And God was leading them through the wilderness, and he's on his where we're at on our lesson is 3 months down the line. Now, after about a month down the line, their provisions that they took out of Egypt ran out. And they're starving. And they complained about it, and God provided them with manna. And so God prepared manna for them every day. And then, they didn't have the water. So the next issue was, they're in the desert. They're in a place where God put them, and there's no water. And they complained, and God provided. Moses took the staff as commanded by God and struck the rock as commanded by God, and the water came forth and fed watered the people, give the people water, 2 million people worth of water. And that's a lot of water that's needed, a lot of water. And again, God is providing. Now they have attacks from actually cousins who are attacking them, distant cousins. The Amalekites, who were descended from Esau, and they started to attack them, and they turned so they were told to send an army out, and Moses was to raise his arms. And as long as he raised his arms and the staff, they had victory. And as he lowered them, the battle went the other way. So if this was a long battle here, and as long as he needed help. He had 2 guys helping him. He had Aaron and Hur, if I remember right. So we had 2 men holding up his arms, and to help him hold up his arms. We've got quite a bit of lessons from that story. Well, now we have moved on from this encampment to another encampment, and we're now going to enter into the Sinai wilderness. I'm at the base of the mountain of Mount Sinai, and that's where we're at right now. We are 3 months away from where we left. So we've been following a trip of about 300 miles has been taken since they left Egypt. Now this is all on foot and moving a herd of people, 1 million people for 300 miles. That is uh, feat in itself, and to have provisions. And I don't know if you ever went on a trip. How many went on a trip and say, okay, we need to have McDonald's, we need to stop to get something to eat. We need to fill up with gas. How many times have we done that? Or how many times, well, a bathroom break, whatever. But you need things on your trip. And God was providing. God will take care of you. I just couldn't help that. That's a great song, whoever, Bill, and that was appropriate for our, God will take care of you. That was a good song, because that's what I saw in the songs, was God taking care of the children of Israel on their trip. And now they're near Mount Sinai, 3 months in, and they've been for well over a month or so, or they've been eating God's food of manna, and drinking from the water that God provides at times. And so now we are ready to begin our lesson in chapter 19, verse 1. Who would like to read verses 1 through 3? Who'd like to read those 3 verses? Go ahead, George.
In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai, for they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness. And there Israel camped before the mount. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel.
Okay. All right. Now, as I said, in the verse 2 talked about Rephidim, wherever that is. That was the place where the Amalekites were, attacking, making their night, or attacking the rear group of the Israelites, and that's where God had them pray and all that. So they departed from there, and they come to this, and now it's it's been a long journey. How many people are into walking 300 miles? I guess some of us in our jobs and stuff have walked, maybe 10 miles a day, just on a regular, just walking around a building or something like that. Maintenance, you go one end to the other, and if you got a job where you kind of service the whole building, like I did, we end up walking from one end of the building to the other end of the building, back to this way and back that way, and you can rack up quite a few miles. And if you have these apps now that you can tell you how many steps you have taken and how many, and it's 10 miles a day is not a bad. And certainly if you're used to walking, that wouldn't be too bad. They were slaves, and so they weren't used to having rides and stuff like that, and so they were probably put to walking quite a bit. And so I would imagine them being slaves, just freed from slavery. They were used to walking and working and stuff, and so this may not have been such a hard trek, except for those who are older. I guess there would be some that would give it a hard trip, and anyhow, but 10 miles. If you did 10 miles a day, that would take you about a month to get to 300 miles. And so they made it easier. God made it easier. He gave them 3 months to get 300 miles. Um, and I would imagine that they didn't, they rested and then they took a long, my thoughts were they went probably a good distance before they stopped again.
Right.
And they rested, and so I think they probably did it in a, well, I don't know, except that we only told two places. They went from Rephidim, whatever it is, and the next place we talk about is in the wilderness of Sinai, and so it seems to me that they picked up and went and dropped down and settled, and then they picked up and went and did it that way, and I speculate at that, so I don't know. They did follow God's leading. But they're in the wilderness now of Sinai. Now, now that they're here in Sinai, they're going to be here for a while. They are going to, if I'm understanding right, if you read the scriptures, I think you'll find out that they stay here for about a year, over a year. And during this time, we're also finding that the book of Leviticus is written. Book of Numbers, I believe, is also written.
Makes sense.
Okay, at least during the end of this time. So we have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and then Numbers going to be could have been written all this time. Now, I'm not saying when they were written. I mean, he had 40 years to write these things. Really. I'm not exactly sure when the book of Exodus was written, and we're not exactly sure when the book of Genesis were written, but okay. So they're in the now they're at the mount. And Moses went up unto God and the Lord, and called him unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel. He has some things to tell the people. Now that they're here, he has some things to tell them. It's interesting that this is where this is the area where Moses had been keeping sheep. This is an area where Moses seen the burning bush. And so this is where the Lord has led them. Okay, I need someone to read 4, 5, and 6. Okay, Danny?
Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel.
Okay. Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. You have seen it, you witnessed it. They were witnesses. They seen with their own eyes their deliverance. And you have seen that God has basically brought them to himself on eagle's wings. we understand the Egyptians, and they saw how they had, God had taken care of them right before their eyes. Their salvation, and they thought it was their doom, was against the Red Sea, and they crossed it. Oh, God opened that up, and they crossed, and the Egyptian army was wiped out by that. The same thing that they thought they were going to destroy them, and here God destroyed the Egyptian army. God, you have seen that, and that's I think is the emphasis is there. Is you're the witness. You are the witness. And how many times do we see things that God has done, and we're witnesses of what God has done? In Romans, the book of Romans, it talks about creation. It says, you are without excuse. Everything that we need to know about God is seen in creation. To his invisible qualities, his eternal qualities, and you are. He declares that you are without excuse, because we can see it. But what is it really the problem? It's not what we can see, it's what's in here, what we trust, what they trust. You have seen it, you have head knowledge of it. Where's your heart? Where's your heart? And that's what I think Romans is getting at, and I think that's what we have here. You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, brought you unto myself. We know a little bit about eagles around from being here, because we see eagles once in a great while, fortunately. I love seeing eagles, especially out in the wild. I don't remember seeing them in Washington, D.C., but since I moved out here, or I would go down to Florida, they have quite a few down there that we see down in Tavares community that they're up in the telephone poles there and stuff. And I remember my trips back and forth to Washington. I remember seeing them out by Richmond. Richmond, they would be up on those billboards, you know. You see them up on the billboards. Once in a great while, I was heading out to Virginia. I remember seeing them there, and eagles to me is just a neat bird to watch and see, and God describes the eagle himself as the eagles bearing up the children of Israel and bringing them to himself, and I bear you on eagle's wings, indicating the strength of the eagle's wings, that he's able to bear the weight of. I guess the way they would train is they would fly, or I don't know, take him out of the nest, and then they would fly with him to get him used to. I'm not exactly sure, but they would fly with him on their backs, and then eventually they get them used to flying or feel flying, and then getting them to take flight on their own, and they would fly under them to be there ready to help them all the way through. And that's what God has done, is helped them to get to himself, to safety. And then verse 5, it says, "And now therefore ye will obey my voice, keep my commandments, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure." Now this is the conditions. We have conditions here. If you will obey. if you obey. That means that if you do something, you'll get some. If you will obey, you get some. And generally, it's well worth your obedience. If you will obey my voice and deed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be what? A peculiar treasure. Not just any, not as in strange. I don't think that's the word here that we're looking at. Do you recall what the peculiar treasures, what a peculiar treasure is? What does the NIV say?
I think it, let's see. I think it means particular, but, see, what's that in Exodus?
That's Exodus 19. I have,
I think it's one of the best.
let's see, 19:5, and it says,
My version says that you will be my own treasure from among all the peoples.
and the NIV says, you will be my treasured possession. It's his.
Yeah.
I think the peculiar is the fact that it's his
Right.
treasure. It's God's treasure that that they will be. How do you become his treasure for the children of Israel? If they were to obey his covenant, obey his voice, and keep my covenant. Then ye shall be my treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. Now everything belongs to me, God, but you will be special, peculiar, my possession. You will be the one that I go to. I have something in store for you. And that's what he was telling them. That if you would keep, that if they would obey his voice and to keep his covenants, they would be a special nation, a treasure. Not just a nation, but a treasure, something that was important.
Says in
Where your heart is, where your treasures is, there your heart be also, right?
Says in here, the idea is that they would be God's treasured possession, a special object of his love.
Okay.
I can't help but think of the analogy of a parent and a child. When you have that child that is obedient and does what really doesn't give you any trouble. I mean, they're just obedient and they're attentive and they listen to what you say. They accept your guidance and your discipline, and they trust you. Well, that child, I know we aren't supposed to have favorites, but you're going to enjoy that child a whole lot more than the snotheads that don't do what they're told. They're always in rebellion. They're always going their own way. They don't listen to what you say. Everything is an argument with them. And I mean, it's frustrating, and there are times when you're just, wanna give them back to the Indians, as my mom would say. So, I think that's the analogy that always comes to my mind, and God's asking us to be that obedient, trusting child to Him, that He knows best. He's given us instructions. He's telling us how to live our life. All we gotta do is read them and follow them. And it can be a beautiful relationship, really, if we just obey and trust.
Okay. And I think part of the point is, whose choice is it?
It's his.
It's ours choice.
Ours.
It's
It's
our
our
choice.
choice
If
of
we
the
I
obey
thought
it.
you said place.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Whose choice is, it's our
It's our
choice.
choice, right.
If we want to be the treasured, it's up to us.
Yeah.
It's up to us, it's each one of them.
This introduction here, you know, I think all of us ought need to read that. It says, John Adams, one of America's founding fathers, once declared, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's true. If you know what the Constitution says and so forth, that is very, very true.
The thing that makes this worked for 200 years is the fact that we were a nation based on scripture. We
Right.
were a moral
People, right?
people. Where it failed was when we weren't moral.
Amen. I agree 100%.
When it failed.
And that's true today, too.
You're right.
I mean, that's why the country,
More so
the
today.
nation is where it's at, because there's a lot of disobedience and rejection of God right now.
Right. And so we're seeing the Constitution and everything deteriorate. Well, it's not the Constitution's fault.
No.
It's the morality of the people that, so how do we change? Well, we're gonna have to change morality. Unfortunately, when we, things that we allowed to come into our nation to enjoy the riches that we've had, it's also our downfall. And where we thought this place is a refuge for freedom of religion is now changed. Okay, so there shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak to the children of Israel. This is what their mandate was. This is what I want to get across to the children of Israel. I showed you that I can take care of you and bring you here. Now, you will be us, and you saw how I could take care of you. You saw how I could protect you. And it's up to you. I have a job for you. And what was their job? Their job were to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. They were to be a light. They were to be an example. They were to be intercessors to other nations. Well, you want to know how to get right? You know how to they were to be a kingdom that was to help the world.
Amen.
And the ultimate goal is fulfilled, and it was through Jesus Christ. So, but they were to be a light and to the world, much like our job here is. we are given the same mandate, and I wish I would have studied a little bit more, maybe, and I would have found the verse that would support this, but we are to be the light of the world, and that's found in Matthew, and they're either 5, 6, or 7, I'm not sure. I think Matthew 5, but we are to be lights of the world. We are, just as Jesus is our intercessor, we are to, the world,
Matthew
here.
5:13-16.
Okay,
Salt of the earth and light of the world.
right.
It's in today's message.
Is it really?
That's the reason I knew what it was.
I tell sometimes that God just leads our hearts sometimes. He just, because I believe that God confirms things and overlaps things, and it just pushes us that this is special today because this is happening. And but God had a purpose for the children of Israel, and His ultimate purpose was in Jesus Christ.
Yes.
That was where He was going with it. But He also wanted the nation to be a nation that followed God. And as we know the history of Israel, when they had a good king that was following God, they prospered. And when they had a bad king that would not listen to God, they were taken under. And you can see that over and over and over. So God was keeping His promises as they made their choices. As we make our choices, God does bless us. Maybe not in the way that we expect. Maybe not in the way of our pocketbook. But it may be something else.
Amen.
You know, there's a lot more than just our pocketbooks. Even though, some of us are on a fixed income now. we understand that money can go only so far, but God supplies the needs that we have. Getting too far. Let's go ahead. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all the words the Lord commanded them. And all the people answered together and said, all the Lord hath spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. And so Moses took God's message, took it to the elders, they took it to the people. The people says, yes, we'll follow God. That was their original answer. Yes, we will obey God and do as He commands. Okay, so He's got the word from the elders, and they took it back up to God. Okay, and God says, I am going to come in a cloud and speak to you personally out of that cloud to Moses, so that the people would know that Moses is being talked to as the leader of the people, so that he can lead them in the way that they should go unto the Lord. So, anyhow, so that when Moses is telling you what I talked to you about, you'll know that I'm talking through Moses, and that's what he did there. And if you remember, I think we talked about earlier or last year or so, that the people says, stop talking.
Yes.
We don't want to hear God speaking to us. We're too scared. It was too much for them. But God spoke through the clouds to Moses to kind of officiate that he was the leader. And with that, I gotta go ahead and ask for the Sunday school report.
The minutes of the Clinton Falls Community Church Sunday School for October the 4th, 2020. Sunday school was open, second to him, meeting were with Jesus. Prayer will go